It's all about Nick today, isn't it?
This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development by a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. Recorded live on Wednesday afternoons at a Google Hangout. Visit us at talkingdrupal.com. This is episode 62, September 5th, 2014. Our tools.
And for a change, we're not just talking about John.
Oh, you've been sitting on that for an hour, haven't you?
You just teed that one up for me perfectly.
Oh, that's too good. I'm still choking a little bit. Had to squeeze that out. Oh, welcome, guys. Welcome to episode 62. And for those live listeners, we are on a Friday, not a Wednesday this week. So welcome. I see we have someone watching live now, and the Q&A room is open. So if you have any questions for us, shoot them over there.
Great.
And joining us as usual, we have Jason Palmental from HW Design.
Hello, hello.
How are you, Jason?
Good, good. It's nice to have a couple weeks at home for a change.
Well, that's good. I bet everyone in the house is happy that you're home as well.
Yeah, mostly. Probably Tristan more than anyone. But
you ready to talk about tools?
Sure.
These kinds of conversations can go on a long time, too, so we're going to try to keep this brief today. We have a big list. Joining us as well is not our tool, but John Picozzi from Oomph.
Good afternoon.
John, I see you're in the office today.
Yeah, I am in the office today. Today is an office day in the lovely south end of Providence. It's a little warm up here. Today.
Yeah, it's been a nice couple of days, actually.
Yeah, great beach weather. I feel slightly sad that I can't be on the beach.
We also have Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Design.
Good afternoon. How you doing? Looking forward to talking about tools. It's one of those things where it's kind of hard to strike a balance between, committing to a tool for too long and, discovering new tools and finding out when a good time to invest in a new tool is. So it's always good to hear how other people have solved, workflow issues. See the variety of tools out there. I think this will be a good show.
It's interesting you brought that up, Nick, because I'm one of those guys who switches tools very quickly. I love to change things and just see what's new that's out there and give it a try. So in another meeting we had today, I switched to a different tool other than GoToMeeting, and I just like to try new things. So I'm one of those people that switch things very often.
It was a pretty good tool this morning, too, until it started echoing, sound like we were in a cave.
It was weird, because I didn't hear that. It was still totally fine on my end.
So I couldn't figure out, because in GoToMeeting I could always figure out where the echo was coming from and mute somebody. With that tool, I wasn't clear on how to. And the tool is Zoom, by the way, ZOOM.us. I couldn't figure out how to tell where the echo was coming from, and I was leaving the call. So I would usually mute people until it goes away. So chances are, if you didn't hear it, it was coming back from your side. Yeah.
Probably.
But I thought the audio quality was superior to GoToMeeting. It sounded like a Skype call.
Yeah, it was really quiet and sort of like a good sort of natural sounding audio.
I like the interface too.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I'm going to hang with it for a while. I'm going to try it for the next week or so. And as many years as I've been using GoToMeeting, for $10 a month for the pro account, it's hard to turn away from that. And they also support up to like 25 people at that level on a video call.
Wow.
Which is fascinating. Anyway, so I guess that's our first tool of the day. I don't even think it was on our list. So we created a list of just kind of going through design, editor tools and things, and we figure let's just talk about the things that we like to use and make our job go better, and maybe some things that we don't like that we've tried. So on the first category we have is design tools, and unless someone has anything other than Photoshop or Illustrator, let's just skip this category. Is there any tools that people use for design?
Well, there's two things that I want to mention.
Yep.
One is Sketch, which is a pretty cool app. I'm only just kind of playing around with it so far, but it's somewhere in between Photoshop and Illustrator in the kind of tool that it is, and it looks pretty quick and easy to use. I've only kind of dabbled with it. I need to actually sort of commit to it for a full design, but it's $79 for the tool, I think, as opposed to several hundred for Photoshop, or $50 a month for the Creative Suite or whatever it is. So it's really inexpensive and really lightweight. It starts up really quickly, and it's kind of built with working on the web in mind.
Yeah, I have also used something similar in the past, more for wireframing than actual design, but Balsamic is a great wireframing tool that I've used in the past. It makes it really easy to build wireframes, and not only just wireframes, but interactive wireframes where you can go back and forth. You can link between pages within a PDF and whatnot, and just has a bunch of like predefined options that you can just drop into pages to build wireframes very quickly.
Yeah, that's a good tool. I know Steve's used that before. I've used that for a long time.
I still use it. It's a great way to throw something together in 5 minutes. I mean, it's
I guess
simple.
OmniGraffle's another one, I suppose, in that realm for building sitemaps and wireframing. It's a little bit pricier, but if you need a Mac version of something like Visio, it's a very capable tool in that sense.
The beauty of Balsamic, in my mind, is that it generates wireframes that look like they were sketched with a pencil.
Yeah.
So it sets the expectation of what it is well. And I find when I go over to OmniGraffle, it looks a little too refined and sets the wrong precedent on what I'm trying to do sometimes. So I'll go to OmniGraffle when I need to do something that's much more sophisticated in terms of a wireframe, because it's got a lot of strength in it. But for the quick and dirty, the Balsamic works great.
I want to mention Typecast while we're in this section, because that one is pretty unique in that it's a web-based app to prototype your typography. And so it's got web fonts from tons of different vendors. There's thousands and thousands of them, from Fontec, Typekit, Fonts.com, Google, a couple others, and it's just like a web app that you get a subscription to, and you can create as many projects as you want, prototype your sections of typography, and then duplicate them and make comparisons, share URLs with your clients, test them in different browsers, see how things render, and they also have a cool responsive design builder that allows you to create the same stuff with different viewports, and then the shared link actually gives you a single page with all those things, so you can test that one URL in a bunch of different devices. So it's pretty cool, and they're just really super smart, nice bunch of people. They're really always working to improve the interface and stuff. So, and they've got great stuff in their blog too.
So one of the categories, and this falls into the category of, for me, the things that I've switched many times, is the editors that I use, which is strange because I know a lot of people who code, they just get stuck on the editor that they just love. But I like to try new features and things. So what do you guys use to maintain source code, to edit source code? So text files, PHP files, CSS files.
I actually have two programs, and I've been recently looking at a third. They're not really IDEs, but I use Notepad++ because it SSHs directly in, and then I use Vim if I'm on the actual server. I've recently been looking at PHPStorm. It's pretty impressive. I'll probably end up making the jump. I'll probably still keep around Notepad++ because it's very quick and very lightweight, but PHPStorm seems to really help out with the process.
So that's what I use. I'm on the PHPStorm bandwagon. Probably have been for about a year now. And it's a great editor and integrated development environment because it's pretty smart about Drupal. And I probably have only scratched the surface of the stuff it can do in terms of giving you help and tips. But I got hooked on it because of the debugging process. So just a real easy way to debug PHP code.
I've been using Coda for a bunch of years now, just for writing HTML and CSS, and then couple that with CodeKit to compile sass or less. And that's been a combination I've been really happy with because that has SSH and FTP built into it as well. So you have sites that you set up so you can automatically transfer files. It actually does integrate with Git too, but I've not really used that function because I was already using Tower.
Yeah, I came from Dreamweaver, the Dreamweaver land, and I was using Dreamweaver with Transmit, which is an FTP program. Subsequently, by the same company that makes Coda, I recently, this is probably about 2 years ago now, I switched to Coda, kind of using the same workflow Jason has, using Coda and CodeKit to compile sass, and using Coda because it integrates FTP and the terminal window, and I'm in the terminal most of the time. And setting up sites and having the terminal just open automatically when you click on a site is really, really helpful.
That sounds useful.
It is super useful, and the ability to have multiple terminals. So like you can open like your development server and then open another terminal window within the same tab set for your local host. So you can switch between them if you're doing something.
Can you open multiple sessions to the same server?
I think so.
Yeah, you could do different tab sets and different windows. So like if I wanted to connect to two different the dev server and a stage server, I could open two separate windows, put them next to each other, and have both connections running concurrently. Actually, I had to do that a couple weeks ago. I was transferring files from one server to another, and I wanted to make sure that it went well. So I opened up both servers in different windows, and I had one on my laptop screen and one on my external monitor. Nick could actually have 6 of those windows open at once.
Terminal windows is one of the reasons why I need multiple monitors.
I've been wanting to spend some time learning more about PHPStorm. I just haven't had the time to do it, but I'd love to get a set of videos. I don't know if anyone knows of any out there that just take you through some of the stuff it can do. Because I'm even looking at it as you guys are talking, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm like Jason and John, sort of with the same workflow. I'm using Tower, but I'm looking in here, and it looks like right from this interface, I can do everything that I'm doing in Tower.
It's interesting. It's interesting. You guys are using Tower. I used to use Tower, and I found it. I don't know. I feel like it overcomplicated Git for me as opposed to using just the command line and doing everything through the command line. I feel like with Tower, I was getting a lot more conflicts than just using command line. The command line for Git. So
I think the issue, John, with using a GUI is you struggle with it unless you understand the command line first, because all it's doing is the commands for you. So yeah, I think unless you understand what it's doing, it's hard to figure it out.
Yeah, that might actually be true, because the last time I used it was prior to being really involved with Git from the command line perspective. So that's a good possibility that if I were to go back and start using it again, that I might say, oh, okay, this works better or the same.
Yeah, I have had instances where people have tried to sort of teach me how to do all the stuff in the command line, and I've just had an easier time working with Tower, and I know that I should understand the command line stuff better, but I don't. So
how do you do stuff on a server, though? That's the problem if you don't know the command line. If you're going to log onto a server and pull code down and.
Yeah, that's not generally
your flow.
I mean that's just not generally how I've had to do stuff. So I mean, if I've set stuff up the other way, where I'm using Beanstalk as the hosted repository, and then I'm setting up deployments from Beanstalk.
Oh, okay. So automatically, okay.
Yeah, I mean that's just a different way of.
So that's actually
it's pushing stuff through FTP.
I think we set it up using SSH or FTP. I don't remember specifically, but yeah, that's basically it.
That's actually what we currently use. So all of our developers are using command line, submitting stuff to the Beanstalk repository, and then Beanstalk is doing automatic deployments to our development servers, and then manual deployments to staging and production.
And Beanstalk is just it's using Git, isn't it?
Can use either Git or Subversion. You have the choice of either Git or Subversion repos when you're setting up your repos. So you have the option of both.
And you can interface with it through the command line, just like you would.
Yep, it has a it has a web admin that you log into, and you can view your repositories and has some tools in there to view commits and compare commits and stuff like that. But yeah, you can once you're in the command line and you do your clone function to your computer, you can totally just use the command line from there on out. You don't even have to log into Beanstalk.
As an alternative to Beanstalk, I typically use Bitbucket. And it doesn't do, I don't know if it does automatic deployments or not. I think it does, but I don't use it for that. I typically use it just to host my repositories and host issue trackers for projects that need it. I find it's pretty helpful. I found it's a bit more difficult to set up specific restrictions than either GitHub or I did use Beanstalk on one site, but I don't know. I didn't need to do this, but I found it somewhat difficult to restrict somebody to only one specific branch. But it was possible to do, so that they couldn't push to master or remove history or delete anything. They could only push to one specific branch.
Okay.
And I mean, the Bitbucket's got a pretty nice plan for small groups. I mean, 5 users is free, and it's unlimited private repositories. I mean, that's we've tried several different things, and I mean, I have some repos on GitHub. I've got some repos, and they're just kind of all over the place, and it's nice to sort of standardize on something.
Yeah, that was really the big selling point for me, being able to have as many repos as I wanted. And it's only, I think the first tier is $10 a month, up to 10 or 25 users, I think, and it's free, 5 or less.
Yeah, 10 users is $10 a month, 25 is 25, 50 is 50. So I mean, it's pretty reasonable in terms of the pricing.
So the minute you put a user onto any one of those repositories in the account, you've added a user.
Yeah, so with all of them, it's kind of the same.
I think there's a way to add somebody without them counting if they have their own company or if they have a paid account. I don't think it counts.
Like with GitHub and I don't know if Beanstalk does the same thing, but like your individual login, like you are a user, and you could be added to other repositories, but you then don't count as a user on that account, I think. So like if I had my own Bitbucket account and Nick added me to a repo, I don't think I count as his.
If you're a paid customer?
Yeah, I'm not sure. If you're not paid, I think you do count. Anyway, all I know is
now we're just making stuff up.
Yeah, we just speculate on the price.
It's reasonable either way.
And GitHub is the opposite, right? It's not counting users; it's just counting repos, right?
Yeah, well, it's like $7 a month for how many private repos?
Five or something.
Yeah, that's why.
We're just going to continue guessing on all of them. I mean, they're all somewhat similar.
Right.
And the nice thing with GitHub is that you have all the other GitHub stuff there. So if you want to with a private repo, if you want to use like the GitHub pages, you can do that. And so I mean, like there's definitely some advantages for that, especially if you're like hosting a project that has a public presence and you want to keep it all in one place.
Like Notetaking, which is currently on GitHub. I think that's actually my only project on GitHub.
I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Yep.
I've been keeping all of my workshop code on GitHub, so anybody can go and grab stuff for Responsive Bootcamp or the type workshop that I did last week.
That's pretty cool.
So we've definitely spent a lot of time on this section. I think we probably should keep moving.
Code control, kind of. Yeah, we fell into source code control. Talked about some of the tools there.
So here's a short list. Yep. Drupal specific tools.
yeah, that's a great category. Do we have any Drupal specific tools?
Yeah, I don't use
a couple of elements.
Yeah, one is Aqua Dev Desktop. It's supposed to be an easy way to host Drupal sites on your computer. I find it just easier to use XAMPP, or I'm sure you guys use MAMP. Another one, I think you could count Pantheon as a Drupal-specific tool, although I'm not. I mean,
I feel like we're kind of overlooking the most obvious one that I'm sure we probably all use, which is Drush.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Drush is a Drupal-specific tool, and it's outrageously helpful.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think I need to preach to the audience about how useful it is, because I'm hoping that everybody out there is using it. But if you're not, you should look into it and start using it. It's essentially a command line tool that allows you to run a host of commands that are normal Drupal tasks. A couple of the ones that just pop to the top of my head are enabling, disabling modules, installing, uninstalling modules, running cron, flushing caches. So you don't have to go through the Drupal UI. You can do it directly from the command line.
And I think what a lot of people overlook or don't take into consideration is that running those commands through Drush is just faster than using the UI. So clearing the cache, running cron happens in seconds versus, might be 30 seconds, might be a minute for something to that run like through the web browser. And if you need to just run updates, that likewise is seconds. That's
and one thing that's really changed how I work with Drush is using feature reverts and things like that. I mean, if you have a group of sites or a multi-site, 6-10 sites with a feature, and you update the feature, and you have to go to each individual site and manually revert, it's going to take you 15, 20 minutes, half an hour to go through them. With Drush, you can say at sites feature revert, yes, and it will do it on each one sequentially, and then you can clear cache and you're all done. It changes the process from half an hour each time to a minute and a half.
We have an episode number 4, so one of our early ones that we talk about Drush. One of the useful things that I use it for is to purge content from a content type. If you just want to blast all the records out of one content type, there's a command to do that.
Really? That's interesting.
I think there's a module that you have to install first.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is.
I actually tried doing that, I think 3 weeks ago.
It works beautiful. I've used it many times.
It did not. It doesn't work when you have to purge 300,000 nodes.
Oh, really?
But
nothing. And to be honest, nothing would really work that well for 300,000 nodes.
The problem wasn't so much the number of nodes. The problem was that every single one had a menu entry. So the menu cache was hundreds and hundreds of megabytes. So nothing was working on the site. Eventually.
What have we learned here today? We've learned that Nick likes to push the limits.
So how would you get rid of them? I wonder if deleting the content type deletes the content. Does it? Would that get rid of the 300,000 records?
I ended up having.
And then just adding it back in?
I ended up having to truncate the tables and then delete the database, but it took 45 minutes to drop the database. Luckily, there was nothing actually valuable in the site. That's why it was open to spam. It was just a test site, and I went and visited it and noticed, oh, this is why the server's running a little slow. There's a test site on here that has 300,000 nodes. But yeah, luckily, like I said, luckily it wasn't a real site.
Okay, so is that it for Drupal specific tools? I can't think of any of those, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Which is fine. We did. Let's move on to some project management things. Things that we use to manage the projects that we're working on.
So we have, I was going to say, we have kind of 3 topics, or 2 or 3 topics coming up next that I think really fall under project management, like issue tracking, time tracking, note-taking, communication, that kind of stuff. But for project management, I've used many different things. Most recently, I've been using BaseCamp and Jira, and Bitbucket, actually. But in the past, I've used Podio, I've used Excel spreadsheets. Unfortunately, I've actually used, there's a Drupal project management distribution called Urpal that I used for about a week. It was incredibly slow, so I kind of dropped that one pretty quickly. But it was a pretty cool project. Pulls in time tracking, issue tracking, client management, content management. Pulls all that stuff into one place. It's very ambitious. If it wasn't, first of all, based in German, and second of all, incredibly slow, it probably would have been my tool of choice. So,
I think that these tools have real different purposes. Like BaseCamp, to me, is a great tool for communicating with a group of people, including a customer, to keep all the communication central. It works through sending emails. It's really good for that. It has a to-do system in it that is okay for handling short lists of to-dos, but not managing an open task list of 100 open items for a project. It doesn't do that well at all. It's for simple to-do lists. So I find myself using a combination of things sometimes. BaseCamp for the communication side, and then an issue tracking system for a project that I'm going over 50 items that need to be scheduled and have time associated with them and have due dates on them.
Yeah.
That's just not a great fit for BaseCamp. But so I think these things kind of have their own purpose, and mixing and matching them is sometimes what you need to do.
Yeah, I mean things like Zendesk or Jira, they have, or GitHub have actual issues. You can assign time to them. You can assign deadlines. You can assign people. All that stuff kind of goes pretty well together. For us, it's the two of us plus our clients. So most of the time we're fine with BaseCamp. We don't really want to split. There's not enough for it to be worth it for us to split things into different tools, or at least there hasn't been so far.
I mean, the trouble with project management is you need to have a balance between managing the project and actually completing the project. So, I mean, the trick is finding a process that makes sure, first of all, things don't get missed or dropped, that if a client asks for something or you ask a client for something, there's a record for it. And second of all, almost as important is that it doesn't get in the way of doing the project. Jira is great when you have multiple teams. Actually, I hesitate to say great even in this case, but Jira is good when you have multiple teams working on something. You have hundreds of tasks. You have different initiatives in the project. One team might be working on theming. One team might be working on a specific feature, and another team might be working on DevOps or something. It's really good for splitting that kind of stuff out, but it takes a lot of time to manage, specific sprints or specific, specific tasks, making sure that documentation is up to date, making sure that people, have enough tasks to work on. For a small project to be overkill.
Nick, I'm not sure that the things you're mentioning are Jira specific. I mean, if you're managing, 4 teams, hundreds of tasks, managing sprints and deadlines, I'm not sure that that's a simple task, regardless of whether it's Jira or anything else.
Yeah, I think what Nick's point is, and we actually use Jira with with Tempo, which is a plugin for time tracking and time management. But I think what Nick's point is there is that for a small shop or a freelancer, Jira might be a little bit too much of a solution for you. We have 30 to 40 employees all using Jira on different levels, designers, developers, executives, project managers, that sort of thing, all within Jira, and we're using Jira as a kind of a project management solution as well, where customers are going into Jira and creating tickets, project managers are looking at those tickets and assigning them to resources. So we very successfully are using Jira for that kind of BaseCamp ticket system combination, and it works really well. It does take, I will say, it takes a lot of time to set up, as far as getting the right workflows in place and really understanding how the system works. But once you do that, it is really a great tool for issue tracking, client communication, and time tracking as well.
Hey, John, are you using the Agile functionality in there, that module where, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but because I've recently created an account with them to just sort of look at some of the features it has, and you can do like regular project management, and then you can add on this module called Agile, and it allows you to sort of organize your work in a sort of an agile way, where you can create sprints and these kind of different terminology and layout than you usually would on other systems that I've used. Are you familiar with that? Are you using that process?
I don't know if we're using that plugin.
You would know because there's a big button on the screen that you click and it says Agile.
Okay, so I guess we're not, but I think out of the box Jira allows you to label stuff and to kind of assign stuff to sprints, because I know one of the projects we're working on right now actually has sprints associated with it,
Yeah,
and I'm getting tickets based on, okay, this is a sprint 2 item, this is a sprint 3 item. So I don't think we're using that specific plugin, but I do think that Jira out of the box has some functionality to handle that.
Yeah, you can either use Kanban or Agile with Jira. I think it supports both.
The nice thing about Jira is, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but the nice thing is there you can set up workflows, which you definitely cannot do within something like BaseCamp. And you can say, okay, this has come in, it needs to be reviewed by a developer for an estimate, and then, okay, it's been reviewed, the estimate's been accepted, send it into the development phase, and it really allows your resources to kind of know what status the ticket is at.
Yeah. I've just started using it on a project we're on, and I like what I've seen so far. So I'm not jaded yet like Nick is.
Yeah, if you you want to talk about it in more depth, let me know, and we can find some time.
I love the next two on our list of project management here, which is email and telephone.
It's hard to avoid.
Sometimes we get so lost in project management with tools and communicating through these other things that we just forget to pick up the phone and call and ask a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I can agree that those are project management tools.
Of course they are.
Well, I don't know. They're methods of communicating to clients, but they're pretty terrible project management tools.
Actually, they're essential tools for managing projects because it's the relationship with the client that matters the most. And if you screw that up because you're just trying to rely on those tools rather than making a phone call, you're jeopardizing the project.
Yeah, that's fine. But I don't. I think we're going to get into a battle of semantics here. But They're communication tools. They're ways of communicating with your clients. The tools that we're referring to with Jira and BaseCamp and other real project management tools are that there's some record, there's some repository of information for the project.
Sure. Well,
with phone calls, with phone calls and emails, you can't, you have the responsibility of logging into your project management tool and documenting that information. A lot of tools actually, I know Jira does, and so does BaseCamp. They allow you to send emails to your client and have your client reply directly to the emails without actually having to sign into the system.
Right. Yeah, that's a huge feature.
I mean, that's actually an awesome feature. If somebody on a smaller scale were using BaseCamp, that would be my number one reason to use BaseCamp for sending messages, would just be the fact that the client can reply using their normal email system, but it's also recorded and documented within BaseCamp.
Yeah, and you can add people, remove people from as you need. It just makes it easier to sort. I think that piece of BaseCamp just makes it easier to sort through specific threads. I mean, trying to find out a specific conversation with a client when they use the same subject on every single email sometimes gets tedious. But I mean, I also agree with Jason. Phone and email are pretty critical. I mean, if they didn't exist,
email with a small project, small client. Sometimes that's you can't always force someone to use the tool that you want to use. Sometimes what's normal for them is email. So you work with email and you keep a folder and you have your written record. But we know those are pitfalls. I just got an email back from somebody who missed something that went into their spam folder, and it was a pretty timely bit of information that is now not going to be part of the project.
It's funny that while we as project managers and business owners and developers try to put a process in place that works for everything, it doesn't always. I remember it was going back a few years now, but we had just implemented a new ticketing system, moved all of our customers over to it, and it was running fine for 6 months until our largest customer and half of our business decided that they weren't going to allow their employees any longer to get to that URL from inside the corporate walls. So months and months of tickets and everything, the whole process just went right out the tubes because most of our, or a good chunk of our tickets was coming in from them, and they could no longer get into the application. And there was no way to fight. There's no way to fight it to have it added back to their good list.
Wow.
So it happened twice to us with the same customer. Very interesting. One of those times was with BaseCamp.
Yikes.
Anyway, yeah. So you need to be careful. Be flexible.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the bottom line. Is you have to be. You have to adapt to what the client and the partner is using. If I'm working with another shop that uses Jira, then I use Jira. If somebody else is using Bitbucket, I use Bitbucket. That's just the way of it.
So before we get away from project management and issue tracking, I'm just curious, is the Bitbucket and GitHub issue tracking very similar to each other, I would imagine?
Yeah, it's a little bit more basic. I mean, Bitbucket really is you just have an issue, you can comment on it, and you can close it.
They both track issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very basic. Bitbucket is actually owned by the same, Atlassian, which runs Jira. So it's really a powered down version.
Oh, it is. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I find it useful just to keep track of what needs to happen on a project. It's not. It doesn't have sprints, versions, any of that information. It just has a list of items.
Right. Okay. How about time tracking? We've got 3 in here. We use FreshBooks time tracking for our projects. So we're using a project management tool, sometimes a separate issue tracking tool, and FreshBooks for putting our time in.
I'm a huge fan of FreshBooks.
Yeah, I used to use it too. We ended up switching away from it to Harvest because of cost. Going from one person to two was actually a pretty big cost increase at the time with FreshBooks, and it was less than half to just go with Harvest. I wouldn't say I necessarily am 100% happy with that. At least it's good enough. I think FreshBooks tends to be a little more accounting centric, where Harvest is a little bit more freelancer time tracking centric. They both do mostly the same things, but there's just a few differences, really. But I think they each have referral programs, so if you use it and put a little graphic on your website and somebody else signs up for it, you get a few bucks, and they've each got good apps for tracking your time on the phone.
FreshBooks has a pretty good referral program, but we just realized, I think, that there's a pretty big caveat. I think, in order to actually, there's a threshold for getting the referral, and in order to hit the threshold, you have to refer at least 2 people within a year, or it must just go away.
I think with all of these things that it's only worth it if you actually promote it and actually get people to use it. I mean, having like 1 or 2 people click on it, you're not really going to make anything. But I know some people that have made a bunch of money doing those things. So it's depends on how much traffic you get on your own website to see if it's actually going to do anything for you.
So not to be a Jira fanboy, but we're actually using Tempo, which I believe is a plugin for Jira or a plugin to Jira, and it's nice because it allows you to keep a timesheet per project. It also allows your project managers, or if you're project managing yourself, it lets you section out your days into time slots, so you can say, oh, this day you're going to spend 4 hours on this project and 4 hours on that project. So it lets you plan your resourcing a little bit as well, which for a smaller company may not be a huge issue. For a larger company, it's definitely something that is looked at pretty heavily. So that's an interesting tool. And for Steve, if you're looking at Jira, you might want to look at that as well.
Mm-hmm. So, in addition to like time tracking, does anyone have any like personal to-do lists that they keep separate? Any tools they use for that?
I occasionally use Workflowy.
Uh-huh.
Workflow is actually a pretty cool tool. I think there's paid and free. It gives you a checklist. You can have tiered checklists, so that you can, for example, have your top list is your list of projects, and then you go in and you can have a theming checklist, and you can have a development checklist and a feature checklist. You can keep drilling down. You can minimize and maximize checklists. It's pretty cool. I think for free you get up to 250 items. If you give or get a referral, you get an additional 250. So if anybody wants referrals, send me an email. I don't use it 100% of the time, but if I have a quick to do, I'll use it.
I probably go with the most basic method of to-do list. I actually use the Apple Reminders app, which is part of iCloud. So I set a reminder, and you have the ability to set reminders based on location, time and date, that sort of thing. And it goes to all my devices. My iPhone, my computer, my iPad, other computers. So it's kind of everywhere. And if you are using a time-based or time and date-based solution, or even a location-based solution, it's great to have that reminder kind of pop up in like 3 or 4 different places. It really stays on you. So it's a pretty basic solution, but
yeah, I was using OmniFocus for a while, and when I don't know, there's like an update to the phone, or I had my phone replaced or something like that, and I couldn't get the version of of OmniFocus anymore that I had, and I didn't want to buy the update to it. So I ended up not putting it back on my phone, and so then I just, without it being everywhere. I think that's the thing. It's got to be ubiquitous and kind of all over the place to be really useful. And so I went back to doing just what John mentioned, just using the Apple built-in stuff.
I'm using a product called Noseby. It's everywhere. It's an everywhere app. Since I'm a mixed environment with Apple products and Android products, it runs on all the devices and all computers, so I'm really, really happy with it. The link will be in the show notes, like it will be for everywhere. All these other things.
Yeah, if I ever decide to go out and buy an Android phone, that's gonna really throw a wrench in things.
So related to these to-do lists, let's just tap a little bit on note-taking. There's two that I'm aware of that I've been using recently. Like Evernote is my go-to. Everything I type goes in there first, typically. I have thousands and thousands of notes in Evernote. Had them for years. Is anyone using anything other than Evernote?
Yeah, in the last couple of months, I've been introduced to Etherpad, and I think Etherpad is unique in a couple of instances. First of all, it's shareable, so you can add people. You can create your own subdomain on the server, and then you can share public Etherpads and you can share private Etherpads. It allows you to keep track of. It's similar to Google Docs, like a document, in that you can collaboratively work on it. But it keeps track of who's typing what. It has line numbers, so you can say, hey, look at line 45. Is that accurate? And it also keeps track of revisions, so you can scroll back in time and see what people were typing previously or what they deleted. And it's free. Right now, I think it's hosted or managed by, I don't know if it's owned by Mozilla. So it's open source, I believe. I've been using it on a few different projects recently, and I found it incredibly helpful. In fact, I was using it during design for Drupal to keep notes with a couple different people on specific talks, so everybody could see what notes people are keeping and add additional information.
Yeah, I again go the simple route of using the Apple Notes app on the phone and on my computer for kind of shorter notes or notes that I need to take while I'm on the go. I also have found that if I'm at a conference or something and need to take some notes, I've been using Google Docs quite a bit. And that's awesome because you can you can drop links in there pretty easily, and it's kind of like a central dumping ground for all the notes that I need to take.
Yeah, I'm with Steve. I've been using Evernote since it came out, and I always start my writing there. Except, for me, like the fact that it works offline, but then when it's online, it syncs to everything really well. That's been huge. So being able to work phone, tablet, laptop, wherever is awesome. I don't have to worry about losing all my writing.
Right.
Yeah, I use Evernote too occasionally. I think I need to start using it more though.
I've even seen people set things up, linking together their Evernote notes with a blog, and actually basically write in Evernote and have it basically be published as a blog, which I thought was pretty interesting.
It's one of the features in the Noseby To Do app I have that you can sync it with your Evernote. So if you name Evernotes with the same project name as the project in Noseby, it connects the two. So if you're in Noseby, you can easily jump over to Evernote. Not a feature that I've used very much, but it is there. Well, let's go on to just some other tools, some other stuff that hasn't fallen into any of these categories yet.
Well, being on Windows and needing a good terminal. I use Cygwin quite extensively. It's basically a Linux emulator. I think that's the way you could describe it. I typically just use it to manage Git locally and SSH into servers as needed.
As opposed to just using the command line from Windows.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't use that. I avoid it at all costs.
We also got on here Sketch, screen sharing, screen snap tool, now owned by Evernote. So if you have Sketch, which is a free product, you take a screenshot, it stores it in Evernote. I've been using it for years to just take a quick screenshot, put some arrows on it, and send it off to somebody. Great little tool to have.
Nice.
It also supports sharing links now too, so you can actually just take the link from it and send the link out, and that file is available on the Sketch server or Evernote server. I don't even know where it is, but it's a handy little tool.
It's in the cloud.
Yeah, it's out there somewhere. We also got Transmit FTP. I use that all the time to up FTP up to some servers. I'm not sure if anyone has any FTP clients that they like. FTP clients seem to be kind of going to the wayside a little bit now that this functionality is built into everything.
Yeah. I'm using the FTP in Coda, but when I was on a PC, I used to use Smart FTP, which I thought was really useful and really great application for FTPing into servers.
I actually still have a pretty recent license for Fetch. I've been using Fetch. God, it seems to be like almost 20 years. I remember it being one of the very first apps that I ever had for working on the web to transfer files from one place to another. But I only ever end up needing to use it when I'm trying to figure out how to get an FTP connection working in the first place, because it's almost always something that I then need to do in Coda because I'm working on code and I want to be able to push it up to the server wherever that may be. But every once in a while, there's just need to just pick something.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, does anyone else have a tool before we end this episode? Just something that you love and just want to bring up?
I just think that last category of communication stuff. I mean, Hangouts. How much has that changed the way we do stuff? I mean, we wouldn't have this show that we've been doing for over a year.
True.
We broadcast live, we record it, audio, video. I mean, everything's great.
The problem with the communication tools these days is there's so many of them, and you get some people that only use Skype, some people that only use Hangouts, some people that only use this, and you got all these windows open, popping up all over the place. So I find it to be. I wish we could consolidate a little bit somehow.
Well, I think they have the different kinds of uses. Skype is really great for one-on-one communication. I mean, it's very, very painless. Hangout's always there's just that little bit of extra overhead in terms of creating the Hangout. I just every once in a while. But Skype is one that there's, I think, more people that can easily understand setting up Skype and using it than Hangouts. So for less tech-centric people, had a conversation with somebody I work with in Monotype this morning in the UK, and she just sent me an email, said, "Hey, you want to chat?" and just fired it up, and that was it. I mean, it's super easy, and audio, video is great.
I think one thing to note, I was joking this morning. I was on the conference call with Steven, and he decided to use, as he opened the show with, he decided to use Zoom.us. And as I was getting on the call and downloading the app, I was giving him some gentle nudging about switching up what apps he uses. I think a great point to bring up here is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to jump into new apps, and don't be afraid to. I know Steven's big into jumping in and out of apps. But don't be afraid of that. I mean, there are a lot of new things out there that can make your life a lot easier, and especially if you're looking for a job or you're trying to get in with certain companies. A lot of the companies use a lot of different things, and having a knowledge of all this stuff is really useful for you.
So, I have one last question. We're talking about communication items. Does anybody have a phone in their office, or is everyone using some sort of?
I got this one. That's my phone.
Okay, yeah, but you know what I mean.
I have an
office phone.
I have a personal cell phone.
Right, okay.
And as far as our PMs and everybody else goes, nobody actually has a phone on their desk. Our PMs do have an app on their computers where they can make outgoing calls, but most of the communication is done through GoToMeeting, Hangouts, Skype, and email, and the tools we talked about before, Jira and whatnot.
We have a Google Voice line that we use. Like if somebody wants like an office line, if I'm not giving them my own cell phone number, then we give them the Google Voice line, and that'll ring on both of our phones. So if we want like a level of separation between that and our personal phone number, we can do that.
Yeah, not to say we don't have a phone. We have a phone. There's a phone in the conference room right here that I'm in right now, and there are certain people within the organization that have phones on their desks for receiving and making phone calls. But everybody does not have a phone on their desk. And the Google Voice thing is actually a great tool that I haven't used directly, but my wife uses for her business line as far as her company required her to get a cell phone. Instead of going out and buying a second cell phone, we use a Google Voice number. So it works really well.
Yeah, I mean, you get voicemails that are transcribed into an email, and you can set up any kind of alerts you want, and I mean it's a pretty nice thing. It's similar to Vonage or any of the other kinds of services like that. So you don't really need the physical telephone.
But it's free.
Right, until they decide to just drop it someday.
Yeah, well.
that's my big concern. And my phone, I'm with Sprint, and I transferred my phone to Google Voice. Yeah. So Sprint doesn't even own my phone number. I have a Sprint connection, but if Google Voice goes away,
just port it back. That's okay.
Look at the bright side. Gmail hasn't gone away yet.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that Google Voice is probably safe because it's so tied into all their other messaging.
Right.
I find it kind of annoying that it's hard to separate them. They all sort of like bleed together.
One of the things that you have to keep in mind, this is a warning for everybody, you have to log in, whatever account you have the Google Voice on, you have to log in regularly because they'll take the number back if it's not in use. And it doesn't matter if you call on it or somebody calls on it, you have to log into the Gmail account that's associated with it. I mean, they'll send you a message warning you, but if you don't.
Really?
Yeah, I have a clients that lost their.
I would imagine logging in with the Google Voice app from your iPhone satisfies that need.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely, I would imagine, since you have to use a Gmail account.
Because I've never had to. My wife doesn't use the email account that's associated with her Google Voice number, and she's never logged into it, and it still works.
I think it took a year. I have a couple client or two that lost their number, and they just didn't log in over a year.
I just tried that, and thankfully it actually is connected to my main Google Apps account. So at least there's that.
All right, let's move on to the module of the week. Talk a little bit more before we hang up for the day.
Module of the week is views flipped table. I think it's John's turn to talk about this.
Oh man!
I was waiting for him to speak up.
I was looking for the intro. Sorry. Segues we are masters not. So the module of the week is what was it called again? Views flip table. That's right.
It was your idea.
It was my idea, and it's a great module because it solves a problem that a lot of people probably have, which is building a view using a table view and having it output your table. The headings for that table are always at the top, or the labels are always at the top of each column within that table. Well, what this module does is it allows you to flip that table so that the labels are on the side of the table. And for whatever reason, that isn't default in views, or at least I couldn't figure out how to make it work. So this module saved the day because it prevented me from having to do a lot of crazy views template work. I installed it, within 5 minutes, and within another 5 minutes, I had the table looking exactly how I wanted it to, without a whole lot of work on my part.
Cool.
Great.
Back to you, Steve.
Okay, thank you, John. Well, as we wrap up this week, I wanted to thank Peter Schneider from Germany, who sent us an email this week thanking us for the show. So he must have got to the end where we gave our email address. So thank you, Peter. I also wanted to thank StubHub User on iTunes. I can't remember if I thanked him in the past. He gave us a recent rating on iTunes that was very good. So we appreciate that. So anyone wants to reach out to us, ask a question, give some feedback, you can email us at talkingdrupal@gmail.com. You could always hit us up on Twitter at talkingdrupal as well. And Jason, where can people find you, and do you have anything you want to tell us about?
You can find me at jpomentel on pretty much any social media network. You can find us at hwdesignco.com. And my little tidbits are my book goes to the printer next week, and I should have physical copies according to them by the end of the month. So by the time Artifact rolls around here in Providence, I hope to have a stack of actual physical books. And I'll actually be talking about it a little bit more in a live webcast next week, on the 10th. Actually, I think it's next Wednesday in the morning, with O'Reilly talking about responsive typography.
Awesome. How about you, John?
I'm actually looking forward to the middle of next week. Oomph is doing its annual company retreats, so the whole Oomph team will be up in Maine, hanging out up there, getting to know one another a little bit better, and building a stronger company. So I'm looking forward to that. And as always, you can find me on the social networks at johnpicozzi.com or at John Picozzi. And you could go to johnpicozzi.com, but don't waste your time.
Right.
And always on at oomphinc.com.
Excellent. And Nick?
You can find me online at Nixvan, Nicxvan, and tweet at me if you're looking for referrals on any of the programs that we talked about today.
Great. And I'm Stephen Cross at stephencross.com or parallaxinfotech.com. And I don't have anything else to tell you about. So talk to everybody else next week.
Hey, wait, we should mention that the submission sessions for NudeCamp closed, and we had a call this morning, and there's an awesome slate of sessions for NudeCamp coming up.
It is. It was actually difficult to narrow it down. We still got a little debating to do, I think, to finalize it. But yeah, November 1st, get your tickets. It's going to be a good lineup in Providence. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, sure.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Have a good
See you
one.
next week.
Thanks, everyone.